Send your baggage through the five whys process. IGN had the experience of trying to solve all of its baggage issues that had been causing wasted time for many years because this is an overwhelming set of problems. Finding fixes quickly prove overwhelming. If in their zeal to get started with the five whys, IGN neglected three important things. Number one, to introduce five whys to an organization, it is necessary to hold five whys sessions as new problems come up. Since baggage issues are endemic, they naturally comes up as part of the five whys analysis, and you can take that opportunity to fix them incrementally. If they don't come up originally, maybe they are not as big as they seem. Everyone who is connected to a problem needs to be at five whys season session. Many organizations facing the temptation to save time by sparing busy people from the root cause analysis. This is a false economy, as IGN discovered the hard way. Number three, at the beginning of each five why session, take a few minutes to explain what the process is for and how it works for the benefit of those who are new to it. If possible, use an example of a successful five why session from the past. If you are brand new, you can use my earlier example about the manager who doesn't believe in training. IGN learned that whenever possible, it helps to use something that has personal meaning for the team. After our meeting, the IGN leadership decided to give five whys another try. Following the advice laid out in this chapter, they appointed a five whys master named Tony Ford, a director of engineering. Tony was an entrepreneur who had come to IGN through an acquisition. He got his start with internet technology, building websites about video games in the late 1990s. Eventually, that led to an opportunity at a startup, Team Xbox, where he served as a lead software developer. Team Xbox was acquired by IGN Entertainment in 2003, and since that time, Tony was being a technologist, leader of innovation, and proponent of agile and lean practice there. Unfortunately, Tony started without picking a narrow problem area on which to focus. This led to early setbacks and frustration. Tony relates, as a new master, I wasn't very good at traversing through the five whys effectively, and the problems we were trying to solve were not great candidates in the first place. As you can imagine, these early sessions were awkward and in the end not very useful. I was getting quite discouraged and frustrated. This is a common problem when one tries to tackle too much at once, but it is also consequences of the fact that these skills take time to master. Luckily, Tony preserved having a five voice master is critical in my opinion. Five whys is easy in theory but difficult in practice, so you need someone who knows it well to shape the session for those who don't. The turnaround came when Tony led a five-voice session involving a project that had been missing its deadline. The session was fascinating and insightful and produced meaningful proportional investment. Tony explained the success had to with more experienced master and more experienced attendees. We all knew what the five whys was, and I did a really good job. Keep up on track and away from tangent. This was a pivotal moment. Right then, I knew the five whys was a new tool that was going to have a real impact on our overall success as a team and as a business. On the surface, five whys seems to be about technical problem and preventing mistakes, but as teams drive out these superficial ways, they develop a new understanding of how to work together. Tony put it this way: I dare say that I discovered that the five whys transcend root cause analysis by revealing information that brings your team closer to a common understanding and perspective. A lot of time, a problem can pull people apart. Five was does the opposite. I asked Tony to pivot the example of a recent success. Five whys analyzed from IGN. His account of it is listed in the sidebar. Why couldn't you add or edit post on the blog? Answer: any post request right to the article content API was returning a 500 error. Proportional investment, Jim, will work on the API, but let's make our CMS more forgiving for the user. Allow users to add and edit draft without errors for a better user experience. Why was the content API returning 500 errors? Answer: the Bson exit gem was incompatible with other gems. It depends upon proportional investment. King removed the gem already done to resolve the outage. Why was the gem is incompatible? Answer: we need a new version of the gem in addition to the existing version, and the app started using it unexpectedly. Proportional investment Bennett covered our Rails app to use Bundler for gem management. Why did we add a new version of a gem in production without testing? Answer: we didn't think we need a test in these cases. Proportional investment Bennett and Jim write a unit or functional test in the API and CMS that will catch this in the future. Why do we need, why do we add additional jam that we don't intend to use right away? Answer: in preparation for our code push, we wanted to get all new jams ready in the production environment. Even though our code deployment are fully automated, gems are not proportional investment. Bannett automate gem management and install into continuous integration, continuous deployment process. Bonus: why are we doing things in production on Friday nights? Answer: because no one say we can't, and it was a convenient time for the developer to prepare for deployment. We be doing on Monday. Proportional investment. Tony make an announcement to the team: there will be no production changes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday unless an exception has been made and approved by David VP Engineering. We will re-evaluate this policy when we have a fully automated continuous deployment process in place. As a result of this 5 hour sessions and the proportional investment we made, our deployment are easier, quicker, and never again will our process allow a developer to place gems into production system with unintended sequence. Indeed, we have not had another issues like this. We strengthen our cluster immune system, as you would say. Without the 5 whys, we would have never discovered all of the information we did here. My guess is that we would have told that one developer to not do stupid things on Friday nights and move on. This is what I emphasized earlier, where a good 5 hour session has two outputs: learning and doing. The proportional investment that came out of this session are obviously valuable, but the learning are much more subtle but amazing for growing as developers and as a team. Adapt to smaller batches. Before leaving the topic of building an adaptive organization, I want to introduce one more story. This one concerned a product that you have probably used if you have ever run your own business. It's called QuickBook, and it's one of the Intuit flagship product. QuickBooks has been the leading product in its category for many years. As a result, it has a large and dedicated customer base, and Intuit expect it to contribute significantly to its bottom line. Like most personal computer PC software of the last 2 decades, QuickBook has been launched on an annual cycle. It in one giant batch. This was how it worked 3 years ago when Wright, the director of product marketing for QuickBook, joined the team. As you can imagine, there were lots of existing processes in place to ensure a consistent product and an on-time release. The typical release approach was to spend significant upfront time to identify the customer need. Typically, the first 3 to 4 months of each annual cycle was spent strategizing and planning without building new features. Once a plan and milestones were established, the team would spend the next 6 to 9 months building. This would culm- cul- culminate in a big launch, and then the team would get its first feedbacks on whether it had successfully delivered on customers' need at the end of the process. So here was the timeline: smart process in September, first beta release in June, second beta is in July. The beta is essential testing to make sure it doesn't crash people's computers or cause them to lose their data. By that time in the process, only major bugs can be fixed. The design of the product itself is locked. This is the standard waterfall development methodology that product development firms have used for years. It is a linear large batch system that relies for success on proper forecasting and planning. In other words, it is completely maladapted for today's rapidly changing business environment. Year one achieving failure. Greg witnessed this breakdown in 2009, his first year on the QuickBook team. That year, the company shipped an entirely new system in QuickBook for online banking. One of its most important features, the team went through rounds of usability testing using mockups and non-functional prototypes, followed by significant beta testing using sample customer data. At the moment of the launch, everything looks good. The first beta release was in June, and customer feedback started coming in negative. Although customers were complaining there wasn't sufficient cost to stop the release because it was technically flawless, it didn't crash computer. At that point, Greg was in a bind. He had no way of knowing how the feedback would translate to real customer behavior in the market. Were these just isolated complaints or part of a widespread problem? He didn't know one thing for sure, two, that his team could not afford to miss the deadline. When the product finally shipped, the results were terrible. It took customer 4 to 5 times longer to reconcile their banking transaction than it had with the older version. In the end, Greg's team had failed to deliver on the customer needs they were trying to address despite building the product to specification, and because the next release had to go through the same waterfall process. It took the team 9 months to fix. This is a classic case of achieving failure successfully executing a flawed plan. Intuit used a tracking survey called the Net Promoter Score to evaluate customer satisfaction with its many products. This is a great source of actionable metrics about what customer really thinks about a product. In fact, I use it and I am used to. One thing that is nice about NPS is that it is very stable over time since it is measuring core customer satisfaction. It is not subject to minor fluctuation. It registers only major changes in customer sentiment. That year, the QuickBook score dropped 20 points, the first time the company had ever moved the needle with the net promoter score. That 20-point drop resulted in significant losses for Intuit and was embarrassing for the company, all because customer feedback came too late in the process, allowing no time to iterate. Intuit senior management, including the general manager of the small business division and the head of the small business accounting, recognized the need for change. To their credit, they tasked Greg with driving that change. His mission to achieve startup uh, speed for the development of QuickBook. Year 2, Muscles Memory. The next chapter of this story illustrates how hard it is to build an adaptive organization. Greg set out to change the QuickBook development process by using 4 principles. Number one, smaller teams shift from large teams with uniform functional roles to smaller fully engaged teams whose members take on different roles. Number two, achieve shorter cycle times. Number three, faster customers feedback testing, both whether it crash customers computer and the performance of new feature customer experience. Number four, enable and empower teams to make fast and courageous decision. On the surface, these goals seems to be aligned with the methods and principles described in previous chapters, but Greg's second years with QuickBooks was not a marked success. For example, he decreed that the team would move to a mid-year release milestone, effectively cutting the cycle time and batch size in half. However, this was not successful. Through sheer determination, the team tried voluntarily to get an alpha release out in January. However, the problem that afflict large batch development were still present, and the team struggled to complete the alpha by April. That represented an improvement over the past system because issues could be brought to the surface 2 months earlier than under the old way, but it did not produce the dramatically better results Greg was looking for. In fact, over the course of the year, the team's process kept looking more and more like it had in prior years. As Greg put it, organizations have muscles memory and it is hard for people to unlearn old habits. Greg was running up against the system and making individual changes such as arbitrarily changing the release date were no match for it. Year 3 explosion. Frustrated by the limited progress in the previous year, Greg teamed up with the product development leader Himishu Bakshi. Together, they tossed up all the old process. They made a public declaration that they are combined. Together, they tossed out all the old process. They made a public declaration that their combined teams would be creating new process and that they were not going to go back to the old way. Instead of focusing on new deadlines, Greg and Himanshu invested in process, product, and technology changes that enable working in smaller batches. Those technical innovations help them get the desktop product to customer faster for feedback. Instead of building a comprehensive roadmap at the beginning of the year, Greg kicked off the year with what they call idea code solution jam that brought engineers, product managers, and customer together to create a pipeline of ideas. It was scary for the Greg as a product manager to start the year without a defined list of what would be in the product release, but he had confidence in his teams and the new process. There were three differences in year three. Teams were involved in creating new technology, process, and system. Cross-functional teams were formed around new great ideas. Customers were involved from the inception of each feature concept. It's important to understand that the old approach did not lack customer feedback or customer involvement in the planning process in the true spirit of Genchi Gimbitsu Intuit product manager PMs would do follow me homes with customer to identify problem to solve in the next release. However, the PMs were responsible for all the customer research that would bring it back to the team and say this is a problem we want to solve and here are ideas for how we could solve it. Changing to a cross-functional way of working was not a smooth sailing. Some teams members were skeptical. For example, some product manager felt that it was a waste of time for engineers to spend time in front of customers. The PMs thought that their job was to figure out the customer issue and define what needed to be built. Thus, the reaction of some PMs to the change was, "What's my job? What I am supposed to be doing?" Similarly, some on the engineering side just wanted to be told what to do. They didn't want to talk to customer as a typical the case in large batch development. Both groups had been willing to sacrifice the team's ability to learn in order to work more efficiently. Communication was critical for the change process to succeed. All the team leaders were open about the change they were driving, and why they were driving it. Much of the skepticism they faced was based on the fact that they did not have concrete example of where this had worked in the past. It was an entirely new process for Intuit. They had to explain clearly why the old process didn't work and why the annual release train was not setting them up for success. Throughout the change, they communicated the process customer they were shooting for, earlier customer feedback, and a faster development cycle that was decoupled from the annual release timeline. They repeatedly emphasized that the new approach was how startup competitors were working and iterating. They had to follow suit or risks becoming irrelevant. Historically, QuickBook had been built with large teams and long cycle teams. For example, in earlier years, the ill-fitted online banking teams had been composed of 15 engineers, seven quality assurance specialists, a product manager, and at times more than one designer. No, now no team is bigger than five people. The focus of each team is iterating which customers as rapidly as possible, running experiments, and then using validated learning to make real-time investment decision about what to work on. As a result, whereas they used to have five major branches of QuickBook that merge features at the time of the launch. Now there are 20 to 25 branches. This allow for a much large set of experiments. Each team work on a new feature for approximately 6 weeks and to end testing it with real customer throughout the process.